Lake Vostok, one of the coldest lakes on Earth. Where is it located? It's in Antarctica, right? Yes, it is. Um, Usually it is a topic for scientific discovery, but now it will be a topic for our IELTS uncovering. So in this video, I will only be doing part one. There's only one part to it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncover my tactics on how to do the IELTS. Um, what what I mean by particular reading project is headings, right? How to uncover headings and how to do them properly. And then over here, this does kind of make me think of true false questions, not given as a reason. This is basically which ones are true, which ones are false, and this one is why it doesn't freeze. I will do more on that later. And questions 7 to 13 are yes, no, and not givens. And I will make understanding on why this is yes, no, or not given. So, without much much more introduction needed, we'll go to 1 and 4 first, which are the headings. There's only four sections we need to head. Actually, there's 5 sections, but it only tells us to head 4 sections. Sections B, C, D, and E, and there are 8 total headings we can choose from. So a lot of clutter in the way, right? So firstly, what I would like to do is usually I'd read the entire thing first, but for speed, I would usually read the headings possible first. So one is cost of exploration. Okay, so right away, cost. Very, 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 very intuitive. You gotta be intuitive when you are in the IELTS reading, especially because there's a time crunch. It says 57 minutes, but realistically, there's only about 20 minutes for each part. So you have to be fast. You have to be quick. And then over here it says number 2 says talks about location. Oh, sorry, my bad. Location and description of the lake. So these are 2 things to highlight, to note about, like the lake and how. This is just where it is and how it is. So I can see that A does talk about Antarctica. A talks about Lake Vostok being Antarctica. So I can immediately deduct that A is 2. But we don't have 2 in here. We don't have A in here. So it is one that we can cross off immediately. For now. It could go back later. Number 3 is potential for living organisms in the lake. Okay. I can see the living organisms. You don't really need to note potential here, because potential doesn't really come with what I'm talking about when I talk about living organisms. Usually, if it talks about living organisms, it's going to be there anyways. And then here we go, the challenges, so the difficulties, right? Take a note of this. Challenge does not mean that it's necessarily a topic of discussion. Rather, it's going to be a hardships. They're talking about the hardships of challenges, right? They're talking about the hardships, right? Number 5 is the discovery of the lake. I remember reading about the discovery of actually no, not about the lake, but the Antarctic race, the race to the Antarctica. I think it was a Norwegian man who did it, and his crew. I think it was it's between the Norwegians and the Brits, one of the two, right? Discovery of the lake. I'm just gonna highlight the entire thing because the entire thing is important. Over 6, the 6th label is possible sources of nutrients to support life. Right, sources of nutrients. There we go. That's our keyword. Sources of nutrients. Because sources of nutrients, of course, they will support life. So you don't need to deduct all that. However, keep in mind that if it talks about supporting life, then it's usually about that as well. And then over on 7, we have types of organisms in the lake. So yeah, organisms. Yep, just that. And then lastly, scientific interest. So just do that. And now we have the list of words we need to look for: cost, location, maybe, or description, depending on how you look at it and what the paragraph has. Living organisms, hardships or challenges, discovery, sources of nutrients, organisms, and scientific method. All right. Now, looking at A, we can immediately deduct that, okay, A2, it's a location and however, if I look again, you reading the paragraph that oh, never mind. I'm actually dumb. Oh god. This is my fault. They have highlighted section A as V, discovery of the lake. So it's not 2, but it's 5, and we can cross out 5. Right. Moving on to B, as details have emerged, a growing number of scientists are showing interest. There we go. A number of scientists have shown interest. Another tactic that you can usually use to look at the IELTS reading parts, especially their paragraphs, are you can read the first sentence and then read the last sentences. Usually it would be enough. However, if it's not enough, then you could just read it outright. For a proficient reader, this should be no problem. But with today's attention span, especially in the younger generation, such as myself, it's gonna be hard. So what you could also do is you could also read the middle sentence. It's weird, but it is what it is, right? Because the middle sentence, as you can see here, says NASA has expressed interest in Lake Vostok, which directly ties to our eighth, because NASA is a scientific organism, of course, and on the first sentence it also talks about scientific interest, with scientists are showing interest. So we can quickly deduct that B is 8. However, I would prefer to read more to make sure that I have not missed anything that could be very, very important. No, not really. So B is 8. Right. That is one tactic you could use. So, for this paragraph, oh god. Hold on, I can do this. Right, for section B, right? Note, you could read the middle, top, and bottom sentences for clues. This is a very, very good tactic in the IELTS, right? When you're looking at something and you see, okay, there's a lot, but I don't want to read because I'm on a time crunch. You can just simply look top, bottom, and middle. That usually works. And then, it really just it cuts the paragraph into 3 different paragraphs, and it makes it easier to look around, to have details, because usually the top, the bottom, and the middle are going to be the ones that are going to express the most information, usually in the IELTS reading paragraphs. Right. For C, I am going to use a different type of tactic, right? For C, what you can do is that you look at the numbers. I can see that C has a lot of numbers, right? Temperatures, they talk about temperatures being 55 kilometers. They talk about temperatures again, and then 70 hidden takes, 60 kilometers. A lot of numbers, right? A lot of numbers. And when it talks about lots of numbers, you could say that it is 2, because description. It talks about the description of lake. It's not cost of exploration, because although numbers, they do talk about the money in them, we don't see any monetary value in these numbers, right? They're just years, dates, temperatures, and distances. So we can cross out 1, and then we can cross out 8 because we've already done it, and 5 as well because A is 5, right? And although organisms, they do tend to have numbers around them, what I do to deduct that it's not 7 is that right here, the 4 kilometers of ice access. It does not talk about organism. It talks about the sheets of ice and how it is. So it's definitely not 7, and it's definitely not 6 either. 6, 7. Yes, okay, I'll be quiet. Um, because simply no. Yes, simply no. It's not the tremendous weight, 70 hidden lakes, small portions. No, it does not relate to 6 and it is what it is, right? It does not relate to 7 and 6. Um, but it does kind of reflect the challenges, like you have to travel far. You can deduct that, oh, 4 kilometers, very, very low temperatures that makes it impossible to traverse through. Okay, I think that, okay, maybe this does relate to the challenges of exploration. And 3 is also not the case here because, well, this is not livable numbers. Who lives in minus 55 degrees? Nobody does, so it's not 3 either. We can deduct it's not 2. No, it's not 1, it's not 3, it's not 5, it's not 6, it's not 7, it's not 8. So that leaves us with about 2 more. Location and challenges of exploration. So, but but we do not see anything about the location, right? It just talks about the numbers and how the lake is. And moreover, this sentence right here, Vox Dock Station holds the most uncomfortable distinction. This makes me realize that, okay, it is very hard to live here. It's uncomfortable. It is hard to live here. So right away, without much further evidence or proof, I can say that, okay, minus 55. I can deduct, okay, not these guys and not this dude because it's not about numbers and not about money. So right away, I can talk about C being 4. We'll check later, but I'm pretty sure it is 4. So section C, what I used the numbers in the numbers. I use numbers to deduct the information in the paragraph. This is a very, very strong tactic, right? If you see numbers, you immediately look at the headings and then you can deduct whether it is about the cost, the challenges, or maybe the organisms, so on and so forth. Then over on D, the first clues to Lake Vostok's existence. So with this one, because it's too small, I would usually just read the entire thing. Then it's quite easy to understand which one it is. It's simply just existence right here. This word, existence and first clues. So this means that it must relate to discovery. But of course, 5 is already about the discovery of the lake, so it's not that. So we need to search further into it. Right. Although the first sentence talked about discovery, look at the bottom sentence. Researchers must find a way to penetrate the icy covering without introducing any. Ugh, it doesn't do much either. Wait a second. I think, right? Hmm. I could have been wrong about the C deduction here because over on D, it talks about along with the potential rewards comes a host of challenges, reflecting on 4. So I believe that D is actually 4. And C, believe it or not, it's actually well, I gotta read again, right? Because it's D is definitely 4 now after reading again. However, that means that C must be 2. we deducted later. We deducted that it would either be 2 or 5, and from reading, I can understand that this must be 2 without much further much further reading. It's definitely 2 for a fact. That's 2. And then lastly, what lies in the depths? If tiny microbes do right, there we go. That's the thing. Tiny microbes. Yep. And the bottom sentence does also relate to it. So E must be 7, not 6, okay? Because it talks about types of organisms in the lake. Right. On to questions 5 and 6. We can see that which is not given as a reason for interest in exploring Lake Vostok. So after skimming the paragraph, without much reading thought into it, to test technology for space exploration is already a red flag because Lake Vostok is not in space. It's in the to develop anti-pollution devices is also quite weird. So maybe not. Mm, to look for a living organism. This is definitely true because of E. Um, yeah, yes. Russian investigators. So they have investigated into the lake. So it's definitely not D. To investigate this sounds very very intuitively correct. So I'm going to say that it is also correct. So it's either A or B. Um, Yes, there we go. So in B, they talked about Vostok would be an ideal testing ground for technology that would eventually fly to Europa or places more distant, say many scientists. So it is not A, and it's definitely B. To search more thoroughly to investigate the history of Earth's climate, uh, hmm. So searching in A, B, or C does not help, and well, D and E is talking about the D and 5. So no. Um, ice sheet above. So I'm just going ahead and going to say that it's B just because A, C, and D sounds correct. Very, very correct. This is just a blind shot. So if there's any other way to do it to find information on B and A, then just let me know. Sorry, on B and C, let me know because in the comments because I'm actually very very confused right now. And then lastly, 6. Late Fox stock does not freeze because a thick ice cover. Yep, this is it. This is it. This is it. Yes, this is it. A. Because why? Because if you look at C, it talks the 4 kilometers of ice acts effectively as an insulating blanket to protecting the bedrock underneath the ice from cold temperatures above, insinuating that a thick ice cover provides insulation. That's the information. Right. Moving on to yes, no, and not given. Only one lake has been found beneath Antarctica. This is false because bec- right. Over on C talks about more or than 70 hidden lakes have been detected in the small portion of the continent to date, therefore insinuating that there are more than 70 hidden lakes. So therefore, more than one lake has been found. So this is false. Over on 8, Lake Vostok was detected by radar. The first clues to Lake Vostok's existence, basically, Lake Vostok was detected when British, US, and Danish researchers collected radar observations by flying over this region. Yes, this is true. Lake Vostok was detected by radar. Exploration of Lake Vostok is coordinated by Russia. The name is very Russian, so I do believe that it is. Let's read, and I believe that A had some There we go. Beneath the white blanket of Antarctica lies half a continent, virtually uncharted territory, an area so completely hidden that scientists have little clue of what riches await discovery. Russian and British immense below Russia's Vostok station, but it doesn't talk about Russia being the place that, you know, there we go. I don't think it is coordinated by Russia. Um Russia has lots of clues to this, lots of ties to Lake Vostok, but no, I don't believe so. So this is not given. We'll check on that later. But yes, it does not give out the fact that Lake Vostok the exploration is coordinated by Russia. It does not state that explicitly. 10. Nutrients to support life have been found in the Antarctic ice. Without extreme nutrients, this talks about D&E, right? Energy limited or oligotrophic for the lake's residents. But the only nutrients would come from below. Russian investigators have speculated that the lake floor may have hot springs spewing out hydrothermal fluids. Um, right, so the crust is old and dead without a stream of nuclear. The only potential source of energy lies above the lake. The ice sheet above the water is creeping from west to east 4 meters per year, and the lowermost layers. So, yes, nutrients, they have been found in the Antarctic ice. I'm tempted to put this as not given. No, it's not given, okay? It's not given. The to the east, west to east, correct. Scientists have drilled to the ice into the water. Um, nope, they have not, because they talked about researchers must find a way. It means that they have not yet. Found it, but they have not found a way to introduce the microorganisms not into the water. The water in the lake is approximately 500 in deep at the southern end. Mm, I'm trying to find anything relating to the number 500, and there we go. At Vostok Station, which sits at the southern end of the lake, the water depth appears to be 500 meters. Yes, this is correct. And there we go. That's the end of all the tactics that you could use. At the end it was more of did you read this or not, but at the start it's very important to understand and list out all the information necessary for you to do the second part in 5 to 13. 1 to 4 is basically just okay, find the information and then you can relate to that information elsewhere. And then 5 to 13 is remember and remember. So if I submit now, right? Submit and review answers. Hopefully I had 11 out of 13 correct answers. Okay, so number 10 was not given instead of yes. Oh, right. So number 10 was correct because I understand now, because for the lake's residents, the only nutrients would come from below. I was hovering towards yes, but I just didn't feel it, I wasn't feeling it, and 4 was instead 7 instead of 6. So again, I was hovering between 6 and 7, but in the end I talked myself into going with 6 instead of the correct answer, which was 7, because let's read it. More than 70 heading lakes. Lake Vostok is stretching 280 kilometers, blah blah blah. No wait, this is question 4, my bad. Where is it? Where is it? There we go. Bacteria, yeast, fungi, algae, pollen grains have been found in the ice core samples. At least some. some of these organisms are alive and capable of growing, which means they are possible. Wait, what? Y- Wait, what was my wrong answer again? Number four. I answered three, which should have been seven. Potential for living organisms in the lake. Instead, should have been types of organisms in the lake. So I think it was just a misread by me. In the end, it was quite okay, but could have done better. And you see, using my tactics, you could get a lot of answers correct. Thank you for watching my IELTS walkthrough on how to do part one. And I know I sound monotonous and very, very boring, but I will try to improve in the future. Thank you for listening.